Well, as I just mentioned, Facebook's independent oversight board has decided to uphold a suspension of former President Donald Trump's account on the world's largest social media platform. The decision comes with deep consequences for President Trump, for the company, and the U.S. political conversation. Social media platforms are under pressure to police false or inflammatory content on their sites while being accused of favoring liberal views and punishing conservatives. While Trump's better known for his Twitter activity, he is permanently banned from the platform following the January 6th insurrection. President Trump this week launched its own social platform. It is a blog titled From the Desk of Donald J. Trump. That was yesterday. We're going to have more with our social media reporter, Kurt Wagner, in just a couple of minutes. Let's, though, bring in Bloomberg editor-at-large Marty Schenker now for more on Facebook's Oversight Board's decision. Hey, Marty, thanks so much for being here. What's your immediate reaction to the news?
Well, I was ready to come on here and talk about how it's going to inflame liberals that Donald Trump is back on Facebook. So this came as somewhat of a surprise. The independent panel had overruled Facebook on 6 out of 8 other issues. So the general feeling was more that they would reinstate Donald Trump. And now he's permanently banned, and his 35 million followers will have nothing to follow.
Well, and so, Marty, then what does that mean for conservatives? As you mentioned, you had planned to come on here to talk about what liberals might say. What can we expect to hear from the GOP?
Well, they're going to double down on the whole narrative that social media is biased against conservative voices. They're going to, in Congress, you're going to hear more voices to restrict the social media's ability to control speech. And you're going to get a lot of fundraising out of the Republican Party on just this issue.
That's what I was going to ask, because we got to look at the money element of this, Marty. Social media has been an incredible platform for President Trump, but at the same time, the organization Trump for President built up an incredible following, not just with emails, but on social. What does it mean for fundraising here? Because the former president was able to use Facebook and leverage the Facebook audience to raise money, but does he really need it?
Well, it makes life a lot easier to raise money through social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram. So does he really need it? Probably he'll find ways to raise money in other places, but it's going to be significantly more difficult. And, there aren't many alternatives out there.
Marty, do you see other politicians maybe looking at this and potentially seeing how this could affect them? I mean, we are still a year and plus out from the 2022 elections, but I imagine some politicians are thinking, this could potentially have an effect on me or my future campaign.
No, there's no doubt about that, Jen. The fact that it's Donald Trump may give ease and comfort to the liberals, but the winds of social discourse change in this country quite often, and this could come back and affect politicians and figures of all stripes.
Well, Josh Hawley has that new big tech book that has come out, The Case Against Big Tech. The Tyranny of Big Tech is what it's called. I'm wondering what it means for Republicans in the Senate and in the House when it comes to regulatory issues with Facebook, with other social media companies. Does this mean they are going to go after these companies more so? And what could they actually do from an antitrust perspective and from what they see as a censorship perspective?
Well, Section 230, which everybody's been talking about, which protects Facebook and other platforms from being sued. The liberals and the Democrats on one side want to make sure that they police the content on their platforms, whereas the GOP claims that those social networks are affecting their ability to communicate. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether anything is done in Congress despite objections to Section 230.
Marty, I know you mentioned that you said you were surprised by this decision. I just want to know, why did you think it could potentially go the other way? Did you think just the political pressure from other lawmakers, from Trump's base, was just so much so that this board was maybe going to reinstate his account?
Well, this board was composed of a diverse group of journalists, of academics. Someone from the Cato Institute was on it. So, and they had overturned 6 of 8 previous matters referred to them by Facebook. So I just felt that the atmospherics were that they would allow Donald Trump to go back. So I was somewhat surprised.
Yeah, I was surprised given the track record of the Oversight Board, Marty. Let's talk about the Oversight Board a little bit, because I was thinking this morning, it seems to be that Facebook is kind of in this, it was a kind of a brilliant move by Facebook here, by having this Oversight Board. It's like win-win for Facebook, because essentially what they're saying is, yes, we have this independent Oversight Board. It is supported by Facebook, but it is not Facebook's decision. Ultimately, it's this Oversight Board's position. So Facebook is essentially keeping its hands clean and saying, hey, it's not up to us. And either way it could have gone, it would have been a win for Facebook.
Yeah, and you're not wrong about that, and it is somewhat brilliant. The thing is that the decision of the board is binding on Facebook. So had it gone the other way, you would have seen Donald Trump reinstated essentially, and subject to the same scrutiny that normal citizens are on Facebook. So you're right, it does insulate Facebook's leadership and Mark Zuckerberg from direct criticism over this ruling.
Marty, what is the significance of some of these members of the board? I mean, I know you mentioned a few of them, but for people who maybe don't know some of these names, what is the significance of some of these people who are on here?
Well, I mean, they did try to choose people of very diverse backgrounds. The former Prime Minister of Denmark is on there. It's an international group, free speech advocates, conservatives, and only 5 members of that committee actually make the decision and recommend it to the larger 20-member board. And they have to, by majority vote, affirm that decision. So as far as we know, it could be as little as 10 people who made this decision.
Jason Miller, who works for former President Trump, just sent a tweet that said a statement from President Trump is coming shortly on this. Marty, what do you make of President Trump's foray into what he refers to as an online platform, but I think is really can be more accurately summarized as a blog, as a really rudimentary website that allows him to post things that can then be shared to Facebook and Twitter? What do you make of his foray into that?
Well, I mean, I think the people around him realize he must figure out a way to get his audience back. There's some report this morning, I believe on Axios, that said that social engagement with Donald Trump is down like 80% or 90% from pre-election. So if he wants to have an impact on the election, he is going to have to find platforms that can get his voice out.
But does it
be difficult?
Yeah, I mean, does in this day and age, does a candidate need a platform? It's Donald Trump we're talking about. He could, and he could have done this between January 6th and January 20th. He chose not to do it, but he could have called many press conferences. He could have said many statements to the White House press corps. Even now, as former president, there are still organizations and journalists who cover him. He could have press conferences.
He could. And, you know, it's not so much what Donald Trump says, but how the media reacts to it. If he calls press conferences and only part of the media cover it, or very few cover it, if he puts out statements and news organizations don't send headlines and don't write stories about it, then his voice is not nearly as amplified as it was when he was president.
Hey, Marty, we just got a statement from the Facebook Oversight Board. We just want to read part of it. It's a pretty long statement, but it's just saying the board has upheld Facebook's decision on January 7th to restrict then President Donald Trump's access to posting content on his Facebook page and Instagram account. However, it was not appropriate for Facebook to impose the indeterminate and standardless penalty of indefinite suspension. And they go on to say that the board insists that Facebook review this matter to determine and justify a proportionate response that is consistent with the rules that are applied to other users of its platform. Facebook must complete its review of this matter within 6 months of the date of this decision. So, Tim, I guess that suggests that we might get a different reaction down the road. I
believe the technical term for this is a punt.
A little bit.
I mean, it does seem like that the Oversight Board is not ruling in a way that is permanent, and then pushing this back onto Facebook. Marty, I think you're still with us.
Yeah.
I want to know what you make of this now that we're reading more into this. It doesn't appear to be a permanent ban. Instead, Facebook must re-examine Trump penalty after 6 months, the panel says.
That's absolutely how I read it. It's basically like an appeals court throwing it back to the lower court, saying you better reconsider this, and here's 6 months to do it. Now, they could come back, Facebook leadership could come back and reaffirm the ban, and then someone could appeal that to the committee, and we could have this whole round again.
Hey, Marty, just last question. Do you anticipate hearing anything from the administration, the Biden administration, Jen Psaki potentially? Do you think they stay away from this altogether, or will they comment?
They won't go near it.
We'll see. All right. Well, thank you so much, Marty Shanker, Bloomberg News editor-at-large. Thanks so much for your time and for all of your insight on this breaking news. We'll have more on this breaking news in just a few moments when Bloomberg's Facebook reporter Kurt Wagner joins us bright and early from San Francisco.